I was working with a client some time ago who had experienced a fairly significant major incident, and they asked me to sit in on their RCA root cause analysis call that they hold after every major incident. Even this brief description in the invitation piqued my interest. An RCA call after every major incident? Well, yeah, of course, you're going to want to get to root cause after a major incident, but a root cause call? Now, I joined the call led by the client's major incident manager, who had convened all of the relevant techies that were involved during the process itself, plus some other key stakeholders. Now, there was a representative from the service desk, someone from information security, their problem manager, a rep from the business department that was impacted the most, and a host of keenly interested service delivery managers. On the call, first question that the MIM asked, okay then, so what was the root cause of the incident? And tumbleweed. Dead silence on the call until one of the service delivery managers chimed in, clearly disgruntled at the disruption that IT had caused. Again, yeah, this is typical. IT making changes, breaking stuff, then trying to sweep it under the carpet. After a fairly tense 45 minutes, the conclusion of the call was that the impacted customer department was going to escalate to their department head so that they could raise with the IT director about why this issue keeps happening. Apparently, it wasn't the first time. Now, after the call, I spoke to the client's operations lead. I asked, was that a fairly typical example of what happens during one of these RCA calls? And their view was, yeah, we go to the nth degree during the incident to get service restored. But when it then comes to discussing root cause after the incident, the techies never have the answers, and that always puts us in a bad spot. How often do you have these calls? I asked. No more than 2 days after the major incident has been resolved, was their response. Okay, I know what's wrong. So let's be clear on a couple of things. Firstly, post incident reviews are not the same as root cause analysis. There is a relationship, sure, but one belongs to incident, the other problem management. Also, let's be clear where our focus should be immediately at the point of resolution of a major incident. It's completely natural to ask the why and how questions at this juncture, and it's important that we do, but we'll get to that shortly. First, I think it's super important to quickly reflect on how the incident was happened during the event itself. How did we spot the incident? How was the incident handled? What did we do? Why did we do it? How did we respond, communicate, and manage our customers? And ultimately, what could have done better? Back in the day, I was responsible for a team of major incident managers, and one of my team once wisely said, each major incident is a dress rehearsal for the next one. And what we do and how we do it during is the audition to be asked back next time to manage the next incident. Quite true. So, whilst the gut reaction is to delve straight into the how did this happen, why did this happen, don't lose the opportunity to make sure next time the somewhat inevitable occurs, you've learned from previous mistakes, previous missteps. So, first off, post incident, let's do all that stuff. And once that is done, then let's work out what we need to do to work towards root cause. Now, for regular viewers, you'll be familiar with my often pretty ropey analogies. The next one, though, I think I'm going to regret. Once we've concluded our post-incident review, which, by the way, most definitely should include your problem manager, I think the role this individual plays is similar to a police detective. If we think about a crime scene we've all seen in certain police thrillers, the detective arrives on the case, sees the victim in a puddle of blood with a knife lying next to them. Okay, so pretty obvious what's going on here. The knife is the cause of death. But the detective doesn't stop there, do they? He or she looks for evidence and leads to discover who is responsible and what led them to commit the heinous crime. And this is analogous to what our problem team should be doing at this stage. Now, just like the crime scene, sometimes root cause appears to slap you in the face. Many years ago, I was involved in a major incident where an uninterruptible power supply in one of our server rooms literally blew up, taking out a brick wall and several IT services as a result. So once we'd restored service and held our post-incident review, we got to our problem initiation phase. Apparent, right? What was the cause of the loss of service? The UPS blew up. Yeah, but last time I checked, it's not a USP of a UPS that they tend to blow up. We know what caused the incident, sure, but does that go far enough for us to mitigate or prevent that in the future? Absolutely not. Now, on further inspection, we found out that the UPS hadn't been serviced for some time and our support contract with the provider had expired. We decided to check the rest of the UPSs in our estate and found, I think, something like 50% of them were in the same position. Support expired and hadn't been serviced. Therefore, these two were increased risk of failure. Now, the root cause here wasn't focused on the specific technical reason why the UPS exploded. However, we had a reasonable root cause. It had exploded because it hadn't been regularly serviced, as recommended, and our contracts management process had failed because we hadn't realised the support contract had expired. Therefore, our steps to remove root cause wasn't focused on the technical elements of the UPS, more so the service management processes we had in place to supposedly prevent this thing from happening in the first place. So, much like a detective would be exploring many lines of investigation to understand how this crime came about, we need to also, when establishing root cause, look broadly for our lines of inquiry to understand what led us to this position. Now, none of this is particularly groundbreaking or revelationary, but where I think a lot of IT departments get it wrong is when it comes to timescales. I think it's fairly common up and down the country in a lot of IT departments for them to have agreements with their businesses or customers that they'll get to root cause or are expected to get to root cause within 5 days. And this is where the blurring of your post incident and problem management processes becomes dangerous. In this respect, let's examine why IT departments or providers have these sorts of SLAs in place in the first place. Presumably to give service recipients, business owners assurance that IT know what happened, why, and that the business isn't going to be further inconvenienced. Now, totally natural. For example, if my car breaks down on the side of the road, I'm going to want the garage to tell me what's wrong, what caused the issue, and what's been done to fix it, so I can be safe in the knowledge that my future journeys aren't going to be inconvenienced by a reoccurrence of the issue. But what garage gives you a committed time scale to say, again, we'll tell you within 2 hours what's caused the issue, why it happened, and what needs doing to fix it? None. Instead, we place our trust in the experts at the garage to get to the bottom of it within a reasonable timescale. So, is it reasonable for us as IT departments to categorically commit to getting to the bottom of the issue within whatever our arbitrary timescale is that we've provided? Most of the times, these sorts of SLAs are in place. I see one of two things frequently happening. Either the SLA fails because the investigation is ongoing, and it may be a complex scenario, maybe involving multiple teams, vendors, partners, or IT just draw a line under the issue just shy of the deadline with either a partial root cause, like i.e. the UPS blew up, or worse, categorizing it as root cause unobtainable. In this respect, the timescale imposed is counterproductive. So why have it? What I think is a better approach is to commit to something that is more reasonably achievable. For example, within 5 days, we'll confirm back to the service stakeholders what are the detective lines of inquiry that we are taking to get to root cause, therefore providing a level of assurance that we're on the case, then providing a status update on what meaningful activities have taken place to progress this, and keeping this cadence in place until root cause is established. That provides a lot more value, not only to your stakeholders, but in the effectiveness of your problem process too. Where I think this 5 days to root cause bollocks has snuck in is much more related to the post incident activities rather than the root cause analysis aspects. I think it's totally reasonable for a service stakeholder to expect that IT have, within a reasonable timescale, held a drains up on how the incident was handled, and as I said, what lines of inquiry we're going to take to get to root cause. Going back to our crime scene, as we've seen on the telly and in the movies, the retrieving of evidence may be limited to a certain time frame, which, if exceeded, might mean that that evidence has diminished or is unobtainable. And the same might apply to our technologies too. For example, system logs or events might be purged or lost after a certain time frame. So in this regard, giving the customer assurance that your team is treating this issue with the gravitas it requires, committing to what your next steps are within a sensible time frame, can be useful to you, your team, and your customers. But categorically setting an expectation that you'll have the crime solved within 5 days, no. Right, that wraps it up for today. Case closed. See you next time at Switch It Off and On again.